and the meeting is live.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's special council meeting to consider the City of Kitchener's draft economic development strategic plan, Make It Kitchener 2.0. I'll begin this evening's meeting with a land acknowledgement, as we normally do, but I'll use the land and call to action acknowledgement that's found at the beginning of the draft economic development strategy. We acknowledge that Kitchener is situated on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. We would also like to acknowledge that our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. As we reflect on the seventh generation principle of the Haudenosaunee peoples, we must consider the impact of our actions and decisions on the next 7 generations. The city's initial response to the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a starting point in the city's journey to develop meaningful relationships and work toward reconciliation with the local First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. We recognize and acknowledge, however, that a more comprehensive approach to reconciliation is required to address systemic inequalities, racism, and to better support, celebrate, and deliver services to Indigenous people in Kitchener. We give this acknowledgement to show respect to the First Peoples who inhabited this land and to remind ourselves of our responsibility to the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, now and always. As we move forward, we must be steadfast in our commitment to do better. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise physical distancing, City Hall is open for select services only. Members of the public are invited to participate in this meeting electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video at kitchener.ca/watchnow. While in-person delegation requests aren't feasible at this time, members of the public were invited to submit written comments by contacting Jeff Bunn at jeff.bunn, jeff.bunn@kitchener.ca. Any written comments will be circulated to members of council and will form part of the public record. So as I mentioned, we're here today to consider the new City of Kitchener draft economic development strategy, Make It Kitchener 2.0. I believe that Mr. Bloom will begin with a presentation. We also have 3 delegations here today. So my plan is to go through Mr. Bloom's presentation, then hear from the 3 delegations, and then go to questions after that. So with that, Mr. Bloom, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to share some gratitude and some thanks. We don't get to a strategy of this level of ambition and importance without a lot of hard work and input by many, many people. So first and foremost, I want to thank our community residents, business owners, business leaders, and community leaders who shared their time, their input, and their ideas, both in good times and more recently in challenging times. I want to thank the mayor and members of council for your engagement and input throughout this process. I want to thank our CAO, Dan Chapman, and our corporate leadership team for their steadfast commitment to this work. I want to thank the many staff across our organization who provided input and support, especially in communications and financial planning. To my entire economic development team who was involved throughout this process and the development of the strategy, including our leadership team who's here with you today to answer any questions, Brian, Emily, Chris, Jeff, Darren, and Cameron. And lastly, I want to thank 3 people in particular who played a significant role in both the engagement process and the strategy in front of you. Victoria Boyle, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes throughout the last 17 months, and 2 who couldn't be here today because of family commitments, GM Justin Reedman, who has been the project champion for this work all along, and Lauren Schlumsky, who was really the driving force and energy behind much of the strategy in front of you. So with that, Mayor Verbanovic and members of council, I'm delighted to share with you the proposed Make It Kitchener 2.0. This comes on the heels of the first and award-winning Make It Kitchener strategy. 17 months ago, you challenged us to challenge the community to think boldly about the type of multi-generational change that we collectively want to see. 950 touch points later, the community shared with us a truly inspired direction. And then the COVID pandemic started. To be frank, the last 7 months have been difficult for many residents and many business owners. At its peak, we had 40,000 residents in our region who were without a job. Many businesses have been forced to close, and we know many more may come. And while we've had recessions in the past 2 decades and weathered them well, the impact and uncertainty today is the likes that I have not seen in this community since the late 90s and early 2000s. That was a time when traditional manufacturing was challenged and shedding both companies and jobs. It was a time when no one would invest in our downtown, and a time when we were clearly ill-prepared for the industry growth that would happen in knowledge and technology. But if we're being true to ourselves, if ever there was a community that could come together in a time of challenge and crisis to help those who've been impacted today and to continue to advance forward together, it's ours. Remember, prior to the pandemic, we were the fastest growing community in Canada. We had the lowest unemployment we've seen in a long time, and we had next to no industrial vacancy. Quite the turnaround from where we were 20 years ago. So why now, and why this strategy that we proposed in front of you? You know, it's our firm belief that the communities that come together in times like this to focus on both the here and now, helping those who've been impacted today, as well as a mind and an eye to the future and where the global economy is heading, are the communities that succeed for years to come. Remember, we weren't the only city in Ontario to face manufacturing hardships in the 90s and early 2000s, but we were one of the few who aggressively worked towards a new economy. The proposed strategy is an opportunity in our minds for our community to come together once again to not just weather the current storm, but to come out stronger in the long run. So now, as we turn to the proposed strategy, it truly is made by our community. Next slide, please, Mr. Bond. Next slide. So what started about 17 months ago with stakeholder workshops, with countless ideas and thoughts, next slide, along with a community survey with 495 communities participating, and I think there's well over 2,000 ideas that they submitted. Next slide. We were able to pull together into 12 initial areas of focus and 36 bold ideas. Next slide. With the work of our advisory committees, we were able to pare that down and streamline that to 9 potential areas of focus, which we took to Ideas of the Brave, where 150 community members and business leaders came together. Next slide. And vetted those areas of focus through a series of inspired exercises, discussion, and debate. Next slide. But you'll remember at that event, we allowed every participant to invest $100, and so we could see where the community's priorities lie. And you can clearly see that affordability and citywide sustainability were number 1 and number 2. What's interesting is that affordability, regardless of who we asked, whether it was residents, social service leaders, or businesses and business leaders, affordability was always top priority. And as you can see from our community, from an industry side, health innovation and creative industries being 2 that they want us to focus on. Next slide, please. Our Economic Development Advisory Committee then worked and did their own investment, and you can see from their perspective, and they reiterated that today, that health innovation is certainly the area that they see as the greatest opportunity for growth moving forward. Next slide, please. And council will recall that you did your own investment exercise and back in November, and affordability, health innovation, social innovation, nightlife came as your top four. Next slide, please. And you'll also recall that we then took the areas of focus that the community had shared with us and vetted them with robust demographic, economic, and statistical analysis to ensure that the areas that they saw as opportunities are truly opportunities for us to see growth in the future. Next slide, please. And even still, throughout the pandemic, we've continued to engage our businesses and our business community and our business leaders through one-on-one interviews, through the work of Best Waterloo Region, through peer-to-peer sessions, and many other outcomes, including extensive discussions with our Economic Development Advisory Committee to ensure we have a solid understanding of the challenges faced by our business community today. Next slide, please. So what did our community truly say? Next slide, please. We summed it up into 5 statements. First, what we feel we heard was, it's not just about doing more, it's about doing better. Next slide, or next, please. That we need to take on major societal challenges like affordable housing. We need to create our own distinct vibrancy for our community. And we need to focus on growing employment sectors such as health innovation. And overall, we need to be a leader in building a better world. Next slide, please. Within the document, you'll see this. This was 2 quotes that came from roundtable discussions that we felt really spoke to what we heard in general from our community, which is really an opportunity for us to stand up and be the city that does the most good in the world. And if there's ever a city that could authentically own this aspiration, it's Kitchener. Next slide, please. Now, if we were to translate that into simple belief statements that reflect the community's ambition, these are the 4 that we've put forward. First and foremost, the time for action is now, both to help those who've been impacted by the pandemic, but to also to begin to build the economy of the future. And that we believe the impact economy is our future, that those businesses and industries that most directly impact and better human life are the ones that we believe will drive the economy of the future. Thirdly, that it's really difference makers, innovators, artists, entrepreneurs, community mobilizers. These are really the people that move us forward. And we need to make sure we have a community where everyone has an opportunity, who wants to, has the opportunity to make a difference in our community. And lastly, a clear belief from everybody who participated that Kitchener is up to this challenge, and we're up to this challenge together. So what you'll see in the strategy are 6 areas of focus. We'll go through them fairly briefly. What I would say is certainly economic recovery is the immediate investment. But as our Economic Development Advisory Committee noted today, all of this is economic recovery, and all of these are important both in the short term and in the long term to ensure that our community continues to be prosperous. And then even within the 5 areas that we haven't noted as immediate investment, there may be immediate opportunities that come forward. Next slide, please. So I won't go into each of these in detail. They're in your package, and happily we'll answer questions later. I'll just touch on a few. So I think clearly, without question, the most important and imminent is the need to have first to support economic recovery. And through our engagement, while we know much of what the challenges our community, our businesses are and our residents are facing, we know there's more learning to happen. And while we know some of the solutions, we don't know all of the solutions. And we need to keep our minds open to all of the needs and supports that will come over the coming months and years. So what we've suggested is a proposed initial allocation of $5 million, and that we would go back over the next couple months and engage our business community one last time and come back to you in January with a starting of a concrete action plan of how you can support economic recovery for your consideration. Next slide. Certainly, I think you saw through all of our engagement, health innovation as a clear opportunity for us to continue to advance. Certainly, this comes off of the success of the first Economic Development Investment Fund and the investments in the School of Pharmacy and School of Medicine, and that our community sees significant growth in this field. Next slide. Creative industries, our community clearly told us that we need to begin to position ourselves as industry leaders, and we have a lot of work to do, and we need to bring industry and educational partners together if we're going to continue to advance and build an aspiration around creative industries. Next slide. We've recommended that we need to take the model that has worked really well in technology and other sectors and really expand on that to create a citywide startup network with a special focus on sustainable development goals, on green technology, on social innovation, for example. And I think one of the opportunities for us to play a role here is to think creatively about some of the space that the city operates, that sits dark either permanently right now or at times of the day that could be utilized to support difference makers in this field. Next slide. And of course, as you saw, the number one priority from every group that we engaged was the need for us to really tackle affordable and attainable housing. And what we recommended is that we need to pioneer as a city mixed income, mixed use communities. We need to explore new investment models, and we need to keep in mind that it's not just housing that we need to continually enable an affordable lifestyle, much like you heard yesterday with the needed improvements to our cycling infrastructure. Next slide, please. And last, we need to continue to make sure that our community is vibrant and active, and really to continue the model that we've embraced to date, which is that it's really the community that builds vibrancy and builds an active city. And our role is to create the platforms and the environment for our difference makers to bring our city to life, and to work with them and our stakeholders to build and promote inspiring and impactful experiences. Next slide. So in order to achieve a bold and ambitious plan like that, we believe there's a need for council to have the resources and the funding to make that happen. In all honesty, that's a challenging ask at a time when we know residents and businesses and business owners will be challenged to see property tax increases to support this work. So my team will probably tell you that they're tired of me using Moneyball references, but really that was our challenge, is to think creatively about what resources we as a city can bring to bear that don't require tax increases. Next slide, please. So what we've proposed is the creation of Economic Development Investment Fund 2.0. So a new Economic Development Investment Fund of up to $110 million. Next, please. And we believe there's a way to do this without the need to increase property taxes. So these are the three sources that we've identified. $10 million that can be found from the Economic Development Reserve. It is noted in the report that $3 million of this is you've already allocated towards the acquisition of 2 King Street West in support of the museum's expansion. But we believe, given the mandate of this strategy, that it's appropriate to include that here. We've recommended $20 million of the remaining EDIF debt room through the reissuance of debt, and the lion's share, $80 million, would be leveraged through city-owned lands. Next, please. And that EDIF 2.0 would guide our investments until 2025, and then the council of the day can decide how and which way we would guide the investments following that. I think it's goes without saying that the uncertainty we live with today, we need to make sure that you as council have utmost flexibility moving forward. Next slide, or next, please. And like we did with EDIF 1.0, we believe all of the city's major investments should be catalytic investments. And what that means is they should be founded around the establishment of partnerships. They should leverage investments from other levels of government as well as the private sector if possible. That we need to be investing in long-term public assets, with those that will stay with our community for generations to come, and that all major investments be business case based and vetted on their ability to provide impact and benefit to our community. Next slide. So I just wanted to dive in a little bit deeper on the strategic land model. First and foremost, I want to be clear that what we're proposing is not a liquidation sale, but in fact, an opportunity for us to maximize the benefits that can come from our land for our taxpayer. Next slide. So what we're suggesting is, first and foremost, when we have opportunities for strategic investments, that we consider their location if they can elevate the value of city-owned land. Next. That for each of our major land holdings, that we would develop visionary master plans through community engagement, and look for opportunities for new economic clusters or focal points or community needs. Next. That we go through a competitive process and a patient competitive process. For those that may not recall, when Center Block went through its first round, the council of the day determined that the proposals didn't meet the objectives and the ambition of the community, and they were willing to wait until the right proposal came forward. Fourth point is we feel the need to, as we go through this process, to retain assets, whether that's new commercial space or new residential units. As I've said to many, I don't want us to be the leadership that emptied the cookie jar and didn't leave assets for the next generation to utilize. And lastly, that we seek top dollar for our lands, and then we reinvest those sales into future investments. Next slide. And there's really three different scenarios that we could imagine, council, that you utilizing land. So first is, if you have a proposal that's to your liking, you could reinvest 100% of those land sales into future investments. Alternatively, you could retain a portion of land sales as capital assets. So for example, perhaps you wanted to retain a certain number of residential units for affordable housing, and then as part of the land sale, and then reinvest the remainder of land sales in other investments. Or think creatively about how we could use 100% of the land value to achieve a strategic objective. For example, maybe it's a large physical space that the city wants to own in order to partner with another academic or public institution, for example, that could help advance our strategy. So these are just three of the possible scenarios how this could play out. Next slide. So yes, this is an ambitious plan, but I wanted to close with two final thoughts. I believe that the ambitions of our community that they've shared with us throughout this entire process that are reflected in the strategy are as relevant now as they were before the pandemic. The focus on issues such as affordable housing, or the need to grow health innovation to meet, or the need to make sure our community is vibrant, are just as relevant now as they were before. And lastly, having spent most of my life in Kitchener with a parent who worked in manufacturing in the 90s, I can vividly remember how painful the 90s and early 2000s were for many residents of our community. But to see how this community came together over the past 2 decades gives me unbelievable confidence that in a time of crisis like today, that this community is ready to do it again, and ready to do it again together. So with that, I want to again thank council for your input and participation throughout this process, and I look forward to your questions tonight. Mr. Brown, you can advance one more if you wish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bloom, and that was a great presentation. As I said, we'll hold off on the questions, and we'll go to our 3 delegations first, and then we'll come back to you. Our first delegation this evening is Art Sinclair. And I'll remind all of our delegations that they have 5 minutes to make their presentation.
Mayor,
Yes.
it looks like Ian McLean's I think he might be going in for Art because I see his hand raised.
Okay, let's move him over.
Through you, Mayor, Art Sinclair is here on the call.
Oh, okay.
He's unmuted.
Yeah, is Ian on? Is Ian here?
Ian is here as well. We can put him on too.
Yeah, he's the one that's doing the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Where are you, Ian? I will.
Here we
There he
are.
is.
There we go. Welcome, Mr. McLean. Thank you for joining us.
Well, there must be a, wait a minute. I start my video. There we go. There must be a joke in there of how many people from a chamber does it take to do a presentation to council, but I'll leave that for another time. Can you still, you're freezing. Can you see? Oh, you're good. Okay. Mayor Urbanovic, members of council, staff, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ian McLean, President, CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. It's always special to appear before Kitchener Council, especially tonight. I want to report that this is the 6th time I've worn a suit in 8 months. So thank you for that. I'll leave it to your imagination whether I'm still wearing my shorts or whether I put a pair of pants on today, but I don't want that to be the headline tomorrow. Let me start by saying it has been a really trying time for the entire community, certainly the business community through COVID. I think the relationship that the business community, in particular our chamber, has had with your council and especially on pretty regular daily or frequent calls with Corey and Brian Bennett and Dan Chapman, that we value that cooperation and collaboration between business, the municipalities, our post-secondaries, healthcare and the like, and right through to the different business sectors. So just wanted to say that has put our region and the city of Kitchener in good stead. I want to start maybe, and I'll come to the report in a moment. I think one of the things that has stood out for me is particularly with the leadership of Tony Lamantia and in standing up the business economic support team of Waterloo Region. That initiative, which with some leadership obviously provided by Tony, but also Ian Klugman and Matt Bondi from Communitech, Greg DeRocher from the Cambridge Chamber, Tony and myself, really speaks to the community coming together, certainly the business community coming together to deal with the crisis and for business and the supports that individuals and business and the community need. But it also speaks to the fact that the business community has come together and understands that the community's interests are business interests as well. The COVID crisis has really, for different businesses, it has been impactful in different ways. In some ways, there's a digital divide that if you are in many parts of the business community, technology, manufacturing, food, it's been difficult but manageable, and in fact some are doing better than others. If you're in some of the hardest hit areas that closed first and will be the last open, like hospitality, restaurants, and many parts of retail, this is an extremely difficult period of time, and there's lots of businesses that fall in between those two extremes. So when we read this report, and Art and I talked about it, and on behalf of our members, we took a long view of where we are right now. The emphasis on at least in the initial part that Corey talked about in terms of supporting business through this crisis, I would echo. I think we look at this and say, when we're talking with the federal departments on a daily basis, the provincial government and with your staff and your team at the City of Kitchener and around the region, we look at this as we are still in the crisis and will be for a period of time, but that recovery can't be far from our thinking as well. And that's a fine balance to try and strike, because if you're closed or your business is not doing well and you have to lay off staff and people are unemployed, then the crisis is the only thing that you think you should be focusing on. And I think for the council, I think you've got to be looking at both. You have to be looking at how we support business now, and be the catalyst that Corey talked about. I like that term, to support in the recovery, but also be focused on what's next. And so I think that's the crisis and the recovery is I see in this document. So investing in the short term and medium term versus the long term is really a wise strategic choice. We support, and I think on behalf of our membership, and I won't speak exactly on behalf of the Business Economic Support Team, but we've discussed this and other programs like this. These are wise choices, and so on behalf of the chamber, we see this investment strategy as being a wise choice, and it builds on, obviously, as you've seen from the report, the success that City of Kitchener has. The investment that you made in the first investment fund is seen every day, and you heard the highlights. I won't go through them, but School of Pharmacy, School of Medicine, the downtown revitalization in neighborhoods, the LRT I think has made sense because of the investments and the growth in density of the residential part of downtown. Communitech has grown and thrived because of the investments, and when bringing in a lot of employment opportunities like Google, but right through manufacturing and other things are a direct result of those dollars being wisely spent to invest in the future of Kitchener. Corey's right. You'll struggle, and I wish you well in terms of your budget making process. There will be no one that's screaming for tax increases, and in fact, quite the opposite. Certainly, business are going to be struggling for a very long time. If you look at the government programs and they're setting some of the, if you've got revenue losses of 60 or 70%, if you're experiencing those losses, it'll be a long time before you get anywhere close to break even, let alone making money. So I think for a lot of businesses, they would see the importance of being wise and understanding that businesses can't afford, nor I would guess many homeowners can afford significant tax increases. So the basket or the suite of ways to finance this program makes a lot of sense. I think it's a prudent approach to having a significant pool of funds available to invest in the future of the city, invest in the potential for jobs and the economic prosperity of the city moving forward. I guess I'd leave on this. We partner with the city, in obviously Kitchener, but with Cambridge and Waterloo and the region and the townships on any number of different things which are important to the well-being of the entire citizenry of the region of Waterloo. Things like Connect the Corridor and talking on behalf of why it's important that we be connected to Toronto with all-day two-way go, as an example. The physician recruitment program that brings family doctors to our community. The work that Greg and I, on behalf of the region of Waterloo, do with the Canada's Innovation Corridor Business Council, and making the connections between our colleague Jan De Silva and the Toronto Board of Trade. So we're partnering, and City of Kitchener is part of those partnerships that I think are paying dividends for the region. So I guess our commitment is that we certainly would hope that council sees its way to support this. Obviously, keeping eye on what those investments are, and those are decisions for another day. But making the decision to allocate these funds is a wise choice. We will continue to be, and Art has day-to-day contact with Corey and Brian, and we will continue to be available for discussion and reaching out to our members so that you get a we continue to have that cooperation and partnership between our chamber and the city, but certainly on behalf of the broader business community as well. So I'd be delighted to answer any questions, but we certainly are fully supportive of this proposal. Hope you'll see way clear, and then we'll be there to work with Tony and your staff and Brian, council, whomever needs to be around the table to make sure it's wisely allocated and for economic prosperity for Kitchener, but by extension, the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. And I was able to give you 10 minutes since you brought the incredible Mr. Sinclair with you. So combined, you didn't use up your full 10. So thank you for that.
I'm blaming my dad. He's the Presbyterian minister, so that we don't do anything in 5 minutes that can be done in 10.
There you go. Councillor Johnson, who's heard some of the sermons, agrees. So with that, Councillor Chapman, you have a question of Mr. McLean?
Yeah, please. Thanks for coming in, Ian. My question is, we're talking about a substantial amount of money here, and we talk about investments and support in somewhat general terms. Are there any things that you think of in your mind that would really benefit the struggling businesses that we have, certainly in my ward, in the downtown wards, and beyond? Like what tangible things come to your mind as supportive to these businesses?
Yeah, so I think some of the things, and I think particularly when we think of downtown cores, I think I think of the struggling restaurants in particular, and the hospitality and tourism sector. To be fair, I think a lot of the heavy lifting in that is going to have to be from the province and the feds. And we continue to say to them, they have to have programs that actually support business. They're the ones that have the tax base to do it. There's going to be financially, it's going to be very difficult when we get to the recovery and getting back on top of our budgets. But the bulk of the programs that will actually help businesses are not things that the municipality can support. I like what through Business Economic Support Team, the work that Chris Farrell and others have done with the BIAs across the region have been very, very useful. I think the fund that you have set aside for the more immediate ways to support businesses is a good step. But we've got a proposal in through the region or through FedDev for supporting that sector of restaurants and hotels. I expect that we'll get some positive news on that. It's those more significant chunks by the federal government, and then obviously the rent program was a disaster. I'm the first to, I was very clear about that. It did not support the businesses that you're talking about with adequate ability to access those funds. The wage support program needs to be changed so that many businesses that can open up just now, they need that support to kind of get them closer to break even. And so I think those major programs are the ones that we're really focused on. I do think there will be some the making it easier for those businesses that are struggling as administratively for some of those changes, like all the cities did around having additional patio space and being able to get those expedited decisions, keeping them open as long as possible. I think I've seen some of the things where, even through the winter months, if there's an ability to have, a safe but a tent type of thing, you've got to keep restaurants with an ability to have more people, because they'll never make it if it's with its social distancing inside their facilities. They won't make it or it won't make sense to stay open. So I would focus more on those types of things. And I know your council and the municipalities have been supportive of the work that we've been doing along with Best Waterloo around challenging the federal and provincial governments to do the major chunks. The issue for most businesses, I'll boil it down to this: it's cash flow. They can't pay their rent, they can't pay their wages, and they can't pay their things like, I know you're supporting it, but taxes and insurance and those things, they just can't make that work. And that's got to be done by the senior levels of government.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Thanks.
Take care.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Mayor Urbanovic. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Art, for coming in. It's always great to see you guys here. And my question is, comparing ourselves to other municipalities, are we seeing other municipalities have sort of any kind of similar plans to what we're proposing today?
I think there's a kaleidoscope. I think every community is a little different. We have some unique characteristics with the three cities that are effectively now, geographically are one, but we've got different downtown cores. There's all kinds of things that people are trying across the province, and Art, if you'd like, we can pass along some of what we're hearing from the rest of our the chamber network of what's working in their communities. I think to some extent, and I go back to what I said to Councillor Chapman, the main pieces are cash flow, and make it fast so that those businesses can stay, but that's from senior levels. I think some of the particular pieces that can be helpful will be maybe even neighborhood by neighborhood. I know that's difficult to do in a municipal context, but what works in downtown Kitchener may not work in downtown Waterloo. And so I think we're encouraging creative and sort of innovative approaches to how to help different sectors and different neighborhoods. And that's what I'd encourage you to do is you're going to hear different things that can help different areas and different business sectors. And that would be the same right across the province. When I talk to my colleagues, and Art certainly would be able to maybe share a few of those types of examples.
Yeah, I think what I would respond with, Councillor Ioannidis, is more along the lines of what are we doing in the city of Kitchener to address a lot of our issues? And again, a great example here is the housing portfolio. I would say, and I've had discussions with a lot of chambers of commerce and boards of trades across Ontario and across Canada really over the last number of years. And the key thing that keeps coming up all the time is housing affordability and just affordability in general. So this is what I think we would really support about this particular economic strategy is the focus on affordability here in the city of Kitchener. Because, we have affordability issues. Toronto has affordability issues. Rural Ontario has significant affordability issues right now. So how do we as a city address our issues and come up with the solutions? And I think that is going to be the key force going forward is how do we address our problems? And from what I've seen of the document in the last 3 or 4 days and the discussions that Ian have had, we think this is pretty well focused on solving our issues here locally.
Okay, that's great. And I guess my last question is, are you getting a sense out there that there's a lot of fear within the community, the business community, in the sense of where things are going, or like?
Yeah, we want to be positive about having it be over sooner rather than later, but I think we have to be realistic and fair, not only to our members, but we're working on behalf of all business. And as the Cambridge Chamber has, and Waterloo Economic Development and Communitech, we're taking this is a community issue, and we want to help solve that. But we got to be honest with people, is the pandemic is not over. There's going to be no vaccine and widespread inoculations for a long period of time. So how we manage through this in terms of being able to manage the virus until we get to that, whatever the magical new normal is. So I think there is a lot of fear, and it depends on what sector you're in. If you're in a grocery store right now, you know what, it's a challenge, but boy, people are buying food. If you're in manufacturing, now that the supply chains are up, your fear is that the supply chain might get disrupted, but those things are starting to come back. If you're in construction, there's still construction going on. But boy, if you're in a retail operation, or you're a downtown core, or a coffee shop, and never forget, while those may not be the big job numbers, there's 40+% of jobs are in some of those sectors that are hardest hit. So I think the answer to your question is yes. I think there's fear or apprehension of what's going on, and it gets worse with the sector, sector by sector.
Okay. Sounds like challenging times. But anyways, it's always great to have you guys here and appreciate everything that you guys do for the community and the business community. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thanks, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, I think carrying on the theme about, being, very worrisome times for our area businesses. I just want to kind of touch on the confidence. I think it's fair to say the level of confidence looking forward, projecting forward is dim right now. Just, a year from being at the high point, I think, of our local economy. Ian, of course, you representing a broad range of businesses. Would you say that a strategy such as this, especially as we're dealing with a pandemic, gives some strength and support to our businesses, not necessarily of what the strategy can immediately offer to them, but just looking forward and seeing the commitment that local leadership has in our economy? What do you think that message is being sent out?
No, I think that this is one of the things that I think Tony would, I know he sent a note. I think we talk at least twice, maybe 3 times a week between the leadership group, which is Communitech and ourselves and Greg DeRocher. And we talk about the crisis issues and how we manage and support people, but we're also talking about, we've got to at the same time be thinking about where people, money is still out there and there's investments happening. And if we want to be part of that, we need to signal that we're thinking about the future. And our municipalities and the region need to be looking forward. And I think that's something that, having been on city council, I think, I'd like to think that most of the time we're trying to do that. We don't always get it right, but I think our region has a history of looking to the future and what's next. I think we're looked at as being a region, and I'm talking specifically of municipalities doing their best to be forward, progressive, but also being wise in how they're going to invest in the different the economy of the future. So I think this actually does send a signal, and it's not about we're not going to outcompete low tax jurisdictions in Tennessee or Alabama for some particular types, but that's not who we are anyways. We want people to say we're investing in community, we're investing in housing, we're investing in the place that people want to live, and that there's supports for if depending on in the various sectors that are in the report, where we're saying that there is government wants to play a role to kind of if in many cases it's the difference between does someone go here or there. And so I think this does send a positive signal that we're managing the crisis today, but we're planning for the future as a community. And business pays attention to that. Business and investors pay attention to where people are thinking to the future and what the future looks like to decision makers and elected officials. So, Corey and Brian, don't kill me, but is it perfect? I'm sure it's not. On the whole, this is a great document that speaks to and trying to make some short-term injections and infusions to support what you've already done, but it should be looking to the future. And I think that that's something that money can move fast, but it can also move slow. And right now people are paying attention and taking their time and saying, where am I going to invest in my next plant or my next startup? Or, and grow my company, or where am I going to put my investment capital? And they're paying attention to who's doing what right here in the region of Waterloo, across the province, across the country, and around the world.
Well, it's impossible to know if this is perfect, but certainly the compass that's, leading us in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, that looks like it's all the questions. So I want to thank both of you for coming in tonight. And Ian, I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity on behalf of council to thank you, as I will Ian, the other Ian who's following you, to thank you public. Oh, there he is already. To thank you, thank both of you since you're both on the screen now for your leadership, along with Tony and your counterpart in Cambridge of Best WR over the past 7.5 months. It became another task to add to the side of your desk, but the four of you rose to the occasion, and it's been a big help to our community. So let me publicly thank you for that.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'll go to our next delegation, Ian Klugman. Welcome, Ian. Oh, we're not hearing you.
That's because I'm on mute. I've also just gone to the dentist, so I might talk a little funny, so I apologize in advance.
No worries.
So thank you, Your Worship, and members of council and staff for allowing me the opportunity to spend some time with you this evening. I mean, I've got to say that when I looked at this strategy and I looked at the idea of doing a an EDIF 2.0, I applaud you. I think this is absolutely the right decision for you to be making right now. Yet Kitchener has reinvented itself, and in large extent, the leadership of the council and the staff at the city, but also the bold move of having an EDIF in 2003. I mean, honestly, I think without EDIF, you'd look a lot like Brantford at this point in time. And I'm sorry, Brantford, but it's not pretty. And it was this bold move that said, we're going to make bets. And you think about the difference that our community is today because of that leadership at the time. We've got an incredibly vibrant urban core. We've got, we're visible from space as far as the really cool things that are happening in downtown Kitchener. You look at the School of Pharmacy, you look at the School of Medicine, you look at Communitech Hub now 130,000 square feet, D2L, Velocity. Look at 1,000 companies that are within 1 kilometer of where we are, all because of $500,000 investment that you put into Communitech that we went out and raised $100 million investment within 5 years. That's now probably close to $300 million investment that has been pushed into the innovation economy in downtown Kitchener. And it would not have been if not for that first initial investment and the bold moves that you made. And so I think that, well, there's lots of incredible data and stories about billions of dollars investment that's gone into our downtown core and into our companies, into 20,000 jobs that we can tie to the work that we've done with the city of Kitchener over the last 12 years. It's incredible. It really is incredible. I think that the one thing that I would say is that, and I'd like you to consider is, this city has been the city that has been bold and taken risks and made bets and has won in so many different ways. And it's, a lot of other cities have been successful in spite of themselves, but Kitchener has clawed its way, out of a really tough period of time in the late 80s and early 90s, and has positioned itself as a jewel at the national level, as a small city that people turn to and say, this is a place that we can learn from. And I think the only thing that I would add is that, is this bold enough? I mean, it's 110 million, which is the same investment we made in 2003. Is this bold enough? And we're coming out of a pandemic, and we've got so many great assets as a community. We've got, like a huge med tech, health technology industry that's emerging. We've got such strong, manufacturing, which we know how to do better than anybody else in this country, is cool again, and it's important again, because people are now talking about the need for resilient domestic supply chains to produce the goods and materials that not only we need as a nation, but that we can sell to the world. And I see such huge opportunities in areas around advanced manufacturing and technology that, I just asked the question, are we thinking big enough? That's all. Thank you.
That really is all. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Klugman, and certainly some inspiring words for council to
well, I think, Your Worship, that we should be very proud of what we collectively, all of us, in different ways and different forms, have been able to achieve since 2003. It's a case study in the community reinventing itself because it was willing to be bold, and I think the time is now again right for us to be bold.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some questions for you. Councillor Singh, you're first up.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. And I think it's really helpful that you did raise that question. Are we being bold enough? And you're absolutely right, because again, this is a formula that's tried and tested. I think it's difficult to fail. The more you put in, the more you get back, and more vibrant and amazing and thriving our community becomes. Or we get left behind in the dust, like many other communities. I won't name them like you have, but I think there are far enough examples out there that we didn't become that statistic. We chose to, tread new path, and we are where we are. And I think it's great that you referenced the 500,000 invest into Communitech by the city of Kitchener. That's leverage upwards to 300 million. And that's where my question is. And that 300 million investment was an attraction to human capital. And I think that's one thing that the initial EDIF focused on, growth of local bred talent, be it through our universities or be it through the incubator like Communitech. And I think that'll probably continue being, hopefully, the strategy going forward. So I see EDIF 2.0, not just an economic development strategy, but a social, cultural, and economic development strategy. It does focus on the arts. I would love to hear your perspective on the need for continual investment in our arts and culture that broadens our community and attracts amazing talent here, and so that amazing companies will continue to grow or follow and come here and make their home here.
You're still muted, Ian.
At least 17 times a day I do that. I apologize.
We
As
all
we all do. No, I mean, I think it's about jurisdictional competitiveness at the city sort of state level. That is where the world is at right now. People vote with their feet based on not just the really cool jobs and, are there a bunch of choices and as far as, a career, but also as to what else is there to do? Are there great, bike trails and paths, and is there a vibrant art scene, and there are great, good restaurants? And so it really has to be the whole package. And I do really appreciate the fact that you're focusing on the whole package. So, I mean, I do believe that, the art scene, and I look at arts less as and I'm a huge promoter of arts, but less about the actual sort of art scene, more about how it contributes to the overall experience of living in this city. So I think, yes, it is important. Absolutely, it's important, and something we need to be thinking about. It's also why we, cobbled together a whole bunch of different players and pulled together within literally 2 weeks a $52 million digital Main Street strategy that's been launched now across Southern Ontario with the incredible partnership of FedDev and the Government of Canada and the Province of Ontario, because we do know that, we feel an obligation that these things are critical and central to us retaining this, this competitiveness, which we fought so hard to achieve over the last 20 years.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Singh. Councillor Davey, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Ian, for coming and making your presentation. The question, for my part, the input provided towards the strategy, I've really been, I think if Corey hears me say we should double down on the tech sector one more time, I think he's starting to tune me out a little bit. But 10 years ago, which wasn't all that long ago, the majority of the top capitalized countries in the world were oil companies, right? And today we've seen fundamental shift. I think the last I checked, the top 6 or 7 were all tech companies, and we've made tremendous inroads in this community, becoming a tech hub, a tech center. And my concern, and I'm less concerned about it now, but I want to get your feedback. My concern is that once you become known, nationally and in some cases internationally for something, you don't want to water it down. That you should double down on that. So having your, third person perspective on this, are you comfortable that the Make It Kitchener 2.0 strategy is including the tech sector enough? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I really do think so. And I think that, one of the things that we've discovered is that sort of distinction between tech and non-tech is increasingly is increasingly kind of drifting away. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, it used to be that if you ran a manufacturing company or an insurance company, tech to you was calling up IBM and saying, bring me some tech, and installing it and then sending an invoice. And of course, now what we've seen is that because of the what we call the Netflixization of markets, the digitization of markets and industries. You know, the way that these companies have to retool themselves is by building their own digital capability in the same way that the city of Kitchener is building its own digital capability, and banks and insurance companies, et cetera, are doing the same thing. So technology has become, you know, a sort of a tool in the arsenal, or in the sort of tools of strategy available to retaining or achieving global competitiveness. And less of a noun about the kind of company that they are. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing, whether it's with the work that we've been doing with everyone from the Royal Canadian Air Force to TD to Manulife to Thomson Reuters to Digital Main Street, is increasingly the value that we as an innovation-based organization can bring to a much broader set of industries. And I think that it's that broader set of industries, and especially with the rise of manufacturing as an opportunity, I think that is a huge opportunity for this community. We know how to build stuff. We know how to build stuff as well as anywhere on the planet. And you know what? It's cool again, and there's huge opportunity again. And I think that's such a tremendous opportunity for us as a community. And at Communitech, we want to be part of supporting that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, you're popular, is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic, and thank you so much, Ian, for coming in tonight. It's great to see you, and great to hear your positive messages tonight. It is an exciting evening. I'm going to challenge you actually on something that you said, that you that maybe this wasn't a bold enough step. So I would love to hear from. My question is, what do you think then that we should be adding to this, or what would Ian do?
Well, I mean, you know, when I came up with the idea for, or we came up with the idea at Communitech in 2007, 2008 to say, you know, we need to be thinking about a major step function as far as putting this community on the map and making and giving companies in the Waterloo region an unfair advantage over companies anywhere else in North America. And came up with a strategy, and it was I'm going to get $10 million investment in this thing. And off I went to see the president of the University of Waterloo, David Johnson, and Tom Jenkins was there, and the three of us are in a room, and I'm like, $10 million and, you know, Perimeter Institute model, visible from space. And they were like, it's too small, Ian, you need to raise $100 million. And I was like, oh. And I remember coming out of that meeting and going, you know, in a way, you know, I don't know how I'm going to raise $100 million, but in a way it was, they forced us to think much bigger. And Google calls it the 10x rule. You know, think about what you're doing and then apply. How could you 10x that? And so I really do think that, you know, given I see we're in hard times and we're all feeling it, and it is really difficult for all of us in all many different ways. We're blessed, obviously, in this community, in this country, but it's still tough. But I see coming out of this such huge opportunities that this intersection between technology, innovation, plus now the rekindling, of advanced manufacturing and manufacturing. I just think we've got a huge opportunity right now to play a significant role at helping build the resilient domestic supply chains that the country needs. And I think the world wants. I think that the brand of Canada is so strong right now, and it's so trusted. And you think about where people turn for, you know, buying stuff in the past, and it was China and America. And of course, what's happened with their brands, they've let people down from a global supply chain perspective. This, I think, is an opportunity to really leverage the trust associated with Canada. At the same time, you know, the incredible ability that we have to build things as well as anyone else on the planet. And so that, to me, it's this, you know, confluence of issues that create this big opportunity for us.
Love it. That's really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Marsh, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ian, thanks for being here tonight. I just want to ask about the tech startups that you're working with. You know, right now we understand that most businesses, including at the municipality, we're working from home. And so our downtown restaurants and cafes and other retail businesses are suffering because we don't have the day-to-day foot traffic. And I'm just wondering, in this economic development strategy, what would you say might be needed as we move towards recovery to attract those tech workers to come back downtown?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've had so many conversations about the future of work and what does workplace even mean anymore. It's, it used to be fairly well understood that it was a place you went in the morning, you commuted there, you biked there, whatever, and that was where you worked. And at the end of the day, you went home. And of course, now all of that's changed because all of a sudden proximity is optional. And I think that means tremendous opportunities for us as a community. One of the biggest issues we've often faced as far as growing great companies in Waterloo Region has been our capacity to be able to attract talent to our area. We're a very small community relative to every other innovation ecosystem in the world. And now, of course, with proximity being optional, we can hire people literally anywhere in the world because you don't have to physically be in a place. So that's the upside and opportunity for us. And to your point, I think what we need to do is, we will be seeing people coming back to work. I mean, many of us are coming in now because, for all that people would love to say, well, it's so much more productive and we can save costs by shutting down our offices. We're human beings and we need to, we need that social interaction. So, I mean, I think that we could certainly work on, some sort of campaign that would, be done in conjunction with the city or with the BIAs about trying to get people, more engaged and more involved in the local Main Street businesses. The retail stuff is actually in good shape. The protocol is well followed. People are very safe. The real issue that we're working through right now that we've seen elsewhere in the province is around bars and restaurants. I think that when it's safe or safer, then we would, absolutely love to be part of a campaign to get people seeing themselves as playing an important role in ensuring that we've got the kind of vibrant urban core that we want in the long term.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in, Ian. My question has to do with the manufacturing industry. That to me really excites me. I've often thought, if we could only sort of turn inward and start manufacturing again here locally, it would make such a difference in employment rates and the economy in so many ways, right? And you talk about, a more technologically driven manufacturing world that could be created. Is there any particular industry that comes to your mind when you refer to this manufacturing industry world?
Well, I mean, we've seen the growth up to now 90 different manufacturing firms tied to personal protective equipment. That seems to be the place that we're starting. But I think that, we've seen people like, the Canadian Shield emerge, Eclipse Automation, so many companies that have, that we've been fortunate enough to work with to help pivot into either new products or new markets. And growth, it's incredible, the growth in employment. And good luck trying to find any kind of industrial space in town because manufacturing's going through the roof, which is fantastic for us. Again, because, when we think about back to who we are at our core, we know how to build things. We always have for 200 years. And I think that's what gives us an unfair advantage over so many other communities is that they're starting from scratch and we're not. We know how to do this. We've got this. I think the other area is that there's going to be a broader discussion around what are those other, key strategic products and services that we need as a province and as a nation, where we as a nation want to invest in ensuring we've got resilient domestic supply chains. And I think it's going to go well beyond PPE. For the moment, it's PPE. But I think in the longer term, people are looking at things like advanced electronics manufacturing and saying, that's a critical supply chain as far as our capacity to be able to manufacture things. I think there's going to be a whole host of areas where, the global supply chain has let us down. A lot of our trusted partners have let us down. And I think there's a growing acceptance of the fact that we need to start doing this stuff ourselves. Now, the opportunity for us is to help establish businesses and help businesses grow that not only are producing what we need, but are also productive and competitive globally, because then it is more than just about price. Because it has to be more than just about price in order for us to win in the global markets. And that's, to me, is the opportunity. But I'm pretty bullish on the opportunity for us if we can sort of capture it.
Okay, I'm just going to push you a bit further.
Sure.
So when we talk about, you know, manufacturing for the, not just for the local market, but the global market, how do you ensure that you can compete within that global market? I mean, if we look pre-NAFTA, the problem was, you know, manufacturers went abroad because they were able to tap into lower labor markets, for example. And so how do you envision Canada or even local manufacturers to be able to compete more broadly?
You know, and I think that's where the technology piece comes in, is that we need to be much more efficient because we do have higher labor costs. But I absolutely believe that it's possible for us to be able to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, Ian, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your perspectives, encouraging us to be as bold as possible as we go forward. I think we've had a great relationship with Communitech over the past decade plus, closer to 2 decades, and look forward to continuing to work collaboratively with you in the future. So thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to spend time with you this evening.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, so just before we go into questions, 2 more pieces of input. Councillor Schneider, the Economic Development Advisory Committee met earlier today. Do you want to just bring forward what that motion was that came from them?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Vrbanovic. The Economic Development Advisory Committee supports the direction of the Make It Kitchener 2.0 strategy and its financial model in principle, with future discussions anticipated on the implementation of the strategy, including any subsequent action plans. That was
wonderful. Thank you for that. And I know both yourself and Councillor Ioannidis were there. Councillor Johnson, I think, was on another meeting as which I ended up joining, and Councillor Ioannidis joined later on as well. And the last piece of input, as I mentioned, Mr. Lamantia from Waterloo EDC was not able to be here, but he asked that I share the following with Council. While the COVID-19 pandemic has thrust great challenges upon the world, Waterloo Region has been up to the task. The private sector, community, and civic leaders mobilized with provincial and federal governments to support individuals and businesses during this unprecedented period. And the results have demonstrated Waterloo Region's storied resilience yet again. For my part, changing our traditional FDI focus to get behind efforts to stand up local manufacturing and supply chain localization has created over 90 companies with domestic PPE capacity that didn't exist just 7 months ago. It is in this spirit that I enthusiastically support the City of Kitchener's EDIF 2.0 with its immediate focus on investments to support local small businesses during the increasingly difficult months ahead, while keeping eyes also squarely fixed on the long game with strategic transformative community investments in important priority areas, i.e. health, creative industries, continued tech startup and scale-up leadership, sustainable development, and affordable attainable housing. The alignment of goals with Waterloo EDC is strong, including our traditional core business, and I look forward to strengthening the collaboration blueprint we've built with the City of Kitchener team, as well as with our other economic development funders, partners, and stakeholders in the region. Stronger together, let's get to work. Tony Lamantia. So with that, I'll open the floor now to questions of staff. And we can stay focused on questions, and then we'll eventually get to comments. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Mayor Vrbanovic. Corey, I guess my question is, with the $5 million, are we, in particular, we've heard from many individuals in the sector of arts and entertainment and individuals that put on events and stuff. So how, in particular, how are we going to focus on helping them? Are we going to be helping them with this plan?
Through the mayor, absolutely, and it's intentionally why when you see the page focused on supporting recovery, we've been broad because we know that there's many different businesses and entrepreneurs who are going to need support, and we don't want at this time, I think, limit the options that council will have to support. Very much so, we've heard from both event organizers, community groups that run events, the challenges that they faced with not having an opportunity to run this year. And I think it's important for us. I think there's a clear connection to the final area of focus around vibrancy. Festivals are such a key part to the vibrancy of our community, and I would imagine whether it's in the first iteration or at some point in time when it's appropriate, I think there should be consideration by council of ways to support those event organizers and festival organizers. What capacity that looks like remains to be seen, but I would wholeheartedly concur that constituent group was going to need some help.
Okay, great. That's great. I still want us to be known as the Festival City anyways, even though that was a couple plans ago. Anyways, Mayor Vanek, when the time's ready, I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. I'll come back to you. We have lots of questions before that, and I suspect some comments. Next up is Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Bloom, I had a question from a resident with regards to more consultation around this project that so far, in terms of getting to this point, we've had a lot of community consultation. They were concerned, whenever we start to make decisions around, say, if we're going to deem some parking lots or something as surplus and deal with those, will that come before the public? Do we have plans in place for any further consultation?
So through the chair, so absolutely. I think today is really just another point on the journey. It's a launching point. So there's maybe two comments I'd share. I think we imagined following the same model we followed with the first EDIF, which was every time a major investment came forward, there was significant public engagement. There was lots of council decision. It wasn't simply here's the projects and let's get moving with them. There always was, and we imagined forward always comprehensive engagement. But in particular, when there's a land asset, especially a significant land asset with and multiple stakeholders, those that are probably living close and those that just have a vested interest, I think it's like we do with all of our processes to date. Initially, we want to make sure there's community engagement to create a vision that really guides council's decisions. So long and short of saying, I imagine extensive consultation coming forward through every stage of this journey.
That's great, thank you. I have one other question, and it's a question that I posed to Mr. Klugman actually, and asked him about how he could see us moving in a bolder direction. If we is there room in this if we have opportunity for us to move in a bolder direction? Do you think that is a place we can go?
So absolutely, obviously resources dependent, but I think what we've really tried to build for council is a strategy that points us in a direction, but doesn't lock you down to exactly the roadmap to get there. And it gives you as a council freedom to seize opportunities that come up, imagine even bolder potential, and have an ability to bring that to fruition. So I hope that's how you interpret the strategy, because that's certainly our intention. And myself, as a lifelong Kitchener resident, there's nothing more. What gets me up every day is the opportunity to make this community better. And if there are ways for us to do that, then I'm always there trying to find a way.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Next up, we have Councillor Singh. Can you hear
thank
me?
you. Yep,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
And, yeah, question to Corey. I think what we're kind of missing out of all of this is it's fair to say, could this be more bolder? And absolutely it could be. And I wish one day it can be. But just to use an analogy that you just said, Corey, it points us in the right direction. But would it be fair that it points us in the right direction without weighing us down when it comes to the ability for the taxpayer to pay? My understanding is it's not going to cost the taxpayer anything more than it already does. Everything is being built within the existing capacity and current assets. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, agreed. What we really wanted to bring forward was just that a plan that we thought we could bring to fruition both immediately, but also over time. And so, and I think the land model on one side, while that's an extreme help in not having to go to the tax base, I think it also gives council the flexibility to be as aggressive or conservative as you want to be. And I think it also allows you to respond to either opportunities or changes in the market, again, to be as aggressive or conservative as you want to be. I would stress that given the uncertainty of our times, that patience may have to be a virtue at times, but I think if we can collectively stay focused on the need to make important catalytic investments, then over the fullness of time, we'll see the impact that we aspire to, that our community aspires for us to lead.
And I think the check-in point is 2025. And would it be fair to say that hopefully we've come out of the fallout of this pandemic and we are in a better footing, that opportunity could present itself at that point of future council in choosing to take it a step further than where we are approaching to take right now.
Yeah, and I think that's strategically why we've tried to create as much flexibility both in the interim in the next 5 years, so that we've certainly identified what we've heard from our community as the immediate focuses. But yeah, for us to predict 5 years out, even a few years out, exactly what we need to do and what the opportunities are would certainly be foolish. So I think it makes a lot of sense for us to continually to imagine be flexible in our approach. And I think we saw much of that success the first EDIF, where initially there was a couple of investments that happened initially, but Communitech I don't think was imagined, for example, when EDIF 1.0 was first developed. And had we closed our minds to those opportunities, we would have missed some of those significant chances. So again, all to say is, I believe this is pointing us in the direction our community wants to go, and leaves you the flexibility to make sure that we create the greatest impact out of it.
Yeah, Corey, just the last question. I want to ensure that, as excited as I am about the strategy, is this a strategy for everyone? Not just about, how do we further develop our core, but how do we make our entire city phenomenal and economically viable? How does it help the suburbs? Outside of this, all the components, what really captured my eye was a citywide startup network, the affordable housing, attainable housing, and a vibrant, active city. I'm hoping these are the three strategies that will not be just a focal point in the downtown core, but every corner of every neighborhood in our city.
Through the chair, so we're very quite explicit that there are very few direct references to downtown in this document for that very reason. I think when the community spoke to us, vibrancy wasn't just about a vibrant core. Yes, that matters, but what we really heard was a vibrant city. So, and so in one respect, yes, I think every opportunity, the opportunity should be looked at from a citywide perspective. I mean, in reality, the majority of our land assets are downtown, so obviously that work will naturally be centered downtown. But I also believe that if you look at the 5 areas of focus, the benefits that come out of it, even if, say, health innovation, for example, was centered downtown, the benefits to that are community-wide. And I think it is our goal to make sure that over the next 10 years, the benefit is really for the entire community.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Singh. Councillor Davey, you're up next.
Thank you. Thanks. Great work on this, Corey, you and your team. going over it, I actually think it's great, and I'll make my comment on that afterward. But if I do have a concern in a process going forward, it's how we go about deciding what to do with the land assets. And my big concern in that is, like, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's fantastic that we're going to be able to address, a lot of the social issues that we all care about. But the other side of that edge is I do have some concerns that if we are overly prescriptive, and I think your center block example was on point, if we're overly prescriptive in what we want to do, for example, if we push too hard on affordable housing or too hard with our environmental hopes and dreams, that we may end up not having the revenue needed to accomplish the other economic development part that we really want to see. So I guess my question is, have you put thought to that? What's the response? And I guess the only thing I would suggest going forward would be if council laid out an umbrella criteria that would probably be much more useful to economic development staff than if every single parcel came to council for us to nitpick and add things on.
Yeah, so maybe a few separate answers to that question. So yeah, one of the aspects we imagine following suit with this is us bringing to you a bit of a list of the assets that we have that we think present the best opportunity and the timing in which, and even potentially the preferred at a high level outcome of each site, so that we can create some structure around what we want to achieve. I think, again, the asterisk on all of this is ultimately somebody has to be willing to build it for us to actually mobilize a vision. So I do imagine there will be, on an ongoing basis, or part of this is council and staff having to balance amazing community ambition with what can be realized. And so I think that'll play into the process. I think the other asterisk is obviously the office market, for example, and the commercial markets are, it's everybody's best guess as to where that goes in the next few years. So I think allowing ourselves to respond as need be will be important consideration. So yeah, I think what would probably be key when we bring that initial sort of next step or disposition recommendations forward is to draw some clear and obvious connections between the aspirations of the plan and how we might realize them, and being realistic and being pragmatic about, we may not be able to get everything that the community desires, but being able to make some decisions on what matters most.
Okay, thank you for that. And I won't bug you with the tech question again. If Mr. Klugman's comfortable with the position, then so am I. Good work.
Councillor Chapman, you're next.
Okay, thank you. I guess the first thing I'd ask you, Corey, can you just sort of remind us and the public how the 2003 EDIF money was spent? So it was the same amount we talked about back then, right? So how was this money spent, and what's your assessment of the outcome of those expenditures?
Through the mayor. So again, it was $110 million invested over 10 years, so it wasn't all up front. Much like now, it started with a fund and a high level direction. And at that point, it was grow the knowledge economy, which included technology, and focus on the downtown. We didn't know all of the pieces that would come to bear, but we knew that was at a high level the objective. What ultimately played out, I think, I would almost divide them into two distinct buckets. Those that were core and critical to industry growth. So that would be the UW School of Pharmacy, the McMaster School of Medicine, Communitech as probably the three most substantial industry pieces that led to the tech and startup boom that we've seen downtown. And the other half I would call are the community amenities that, again, remember the focus was downtown, that really, I think, created the amenities that have driven the desire to live downtown that we're seeing now. So that was a major investment in the library, a major investment in King Street, and significant investment in a new community, so the new downtown community center. So I think what was successful, or if I reflect on that, was that it was a balance of both industry growth and community amenity.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. My other question is, well, I understand that we will be getting a list of the assets and the land. I mean, I know we've been asking for this for quite a while, and that would be very useful to have. I'm a bit puzzled with the amount of thought and money that's being proposed for affordable housing, because as you know, I'm on the Affordable Housing Strategy Committee, and we were told, and we've been told over and over again, that affordable housing is not a City of Kitchener responsibility. So can you give us better clarity on what this means in this strategy document?
Great question. So through the mayor, where I could foresee us as the city really playing an active role in affordable housing is looking at our land assets and figuring out how we can create units that would stay within city ownership. So for example, this is a model that has been used by various organizations in Toronto, where by and large, they sell their air rights to a private sector developer who builds X number of units. And rather than taking full value of the land, they retain X number of units so that they have those units in their portfolio. In their case, they're not usually using it for affordable housing, but in our case, we could consider that. And so imagine out of a development, we had a certain percentage of units that the city owned. We could then partner with a housing provider to see them manage it over time. The benefit of looking at leveraging our land that way is, unlike a zoning case where we've had challenges with, like, how do we make sure that on an ongoing basis, units that are built affordable stay affordable? In this case, the city would have direct purview to make sure that they do stay affordable. And what was seen in the Toronto model is those units appreciate in value, and then the city would have an ability to make decisions down the road. They may keep them forever as affordable housing, or they may, if affordable housing isn't an issue, they could consider liquidating those units and using that funds either for, say, new affordable housing or other initiatives. So for me, I think that is probably the opportunity ahead for us when we think about leveraging our lands for affordable housing.
And you're saying selling these lands to a service provider, like, say, Kitchener Housing, or what?
No, I think we would, through the chair, what I would, and again, it's detail that we'll get to, but what I would foresee is the city continues to maintain ownership in perpetuity. They are always our units, but we are not housing service providers. We know that we would need a partner. So whatever that model might look like, it may look like we don't collect the rent revenue, we just own the units, and the service provider collects the rent revenue to pay for the services that they offer and the cost of the space, for example. So again, it's I think thinking creatively about how we can leverage our land to achieve the objectives of the strategy.
And I sorry to dwell on this, but when we talk about affordable units, are we talking attainable units or affordable units?
Through the chair, I think that's it could be both. I think that'll be council's if and when we get to that point with a given project or with a given site or a collection of sites. Really for council to put its mind to what you would want the mandate to be, and it could be both.
Okay, thank you. I think there's well, I just have one other question on page.
Jackman, can I ask you to?
Yeah, I'll come back.
And just further on that housing one, I'll just maybe add in. I mean, one of the points that Mr. Bloom didn't touch on is that our ability to use those assets to then partner with whether it's the region or the province will potentially free up money through the federal government and CMHC, because collaboration is one of the things that they look at in their models. Councillor Galloway-Seelock, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Corey, for the report. I've already heard that we'll be getting a list of the assets, but I just want to know, are there any limits or boundaries around that with regard to the land assets that we might be selling?
So through the mayor, certainly we're not looking at, we're really looking at vacant or surplus lands. Our focus would not be on community centers, arenas, golf courses, amenities that, playgrounds, amenities that we know are near and dear to our community. It would really be, we've got a number of just vacant parcels of land that aren't being used for anything across the city. Obviously, downtown parking lots are going to be a focus. Our former Brom Street yard. So, yeah, it's really, our initial focus will be on those lands that are not the rich community amenities and assets that our community values.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I kind of had an idea that it was going that route, but wanted to make sure that was on the record. Why does this have to mimic the original EDIF? Why does it have to be $110 million?
So through the chair, it can be whatever limit the council decides. I have said, while the other one was a guaranteed 110, very explicitly, I've said up to 110 million because I do want to preface that 80 million is subject to land sales and whether we can, I'm confident we could realize that over the 10-year period, but we're in a period of uncertainty. I think from my standpoint, EDIF 1.0 was seen, as you heard from some of our delegations, really as a bold, ambitious decision for a municipality to make, to the point where a lot of people took interest and really said, gee, Kitchener really is focused on the future and they're willing to be impactful. And so to me, the value of 110 million also, I think, reiterates our commitment as a community to the future.
Okay, I will have comments with regards to that at the appropriate time, but those are all my questions. Thanks, Corey.
Councillor Schneider, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor Vrbanovic. Corey, there's been a lot of questions asked of you about the actual report, but I kind of want to maybe delve into, something you said about you love waking up every day and coming into work and finding ways to make Kitchener a better city. Through this whole process, as it started, as the engagement started, as the results came and were formulated, maybe just tell me personally, what really excited you most about the response you got, the positions of our citizens, and how that shaped the direction that EDIF 2.0 is going to go in?
Great question. So through the mayor, what I think, what I wasn't anticipating from the outset was how amazingly focused our community was on building a better world, building a better community. It would have been very easy, I think, for our business community in particular to say, hey, look at the great success we've had over the last 20 years. Let's just keep growing in that way. But they didn't say that. They said, we don't want to just grow, we want to grow better, and we want to tackle big problems like affordable housing. We care about sustainability. So I think for me, that was and my team, that I think was truly inspirational, and that we were hearing that from business leaders, that they too care about those aspects. And I think if it was interesting, there was a number of in many of the discussions, there were some that said, Kitchener needs a vibe, and in part, I think that is Kitchener's vibe. That is who we are as a community, is that we strive to make sure that we build a better community for everyone. And so I was really excited to see that come through all of our conversations through this process.
Okay, thanks so much, Corey.
Thanks, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Chapman, we're back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple questions. First, regarding the provincial and federal government support for, coming out of this pandemic and the crisis that we're in. Do you factor, how much are you factoring that into the needs that you're presenting to us here? So
through the chair, it'll be critically important. So I think as has been said, and I would reiterate it, it's not the municipality. We don't have the capacity to be the ones that bail business out. That is federal and provincial responsibility to provide those supports. Ours need to be more strategic. And again, why we want to leave opportunities open for council, even on the recovery work, because we know that the province and the federal governments are going to be announcing funding streams. They've already started to announce ones, and in a lot of the cases, they're looking for the communities for the communities that are willing to partner with them and leverage their dollars together. So, I think we'll be continuously monitoring, and I think we want to make sure that you have every opportunity, should those come up, to have resources that if it's the right opportunity for you to pursue.
And if the money came forward, do you see an opportunity for us to scale back on EDIF at some point?
I think through the chair, those that were involved in the first EDIF will always remind us that the $500,000 investment in Communitech was the one that multiplied the most, right? So, I think in every case, our responsibility to the taxpayer is to figure out how we leverage every dollar to the best possible way. And if there are federal and provincial programs where we don't have to be as financially committed, then I think it's always in our best interest to do that work.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Marsh, questions?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to ask about the plan for, I know that this is a high-level plan that we're going to be getting into some more business cases later on. And so I'm just wondering, when can we expect to see some more detailed plans about how we're going to support the arts and culture community?
So I might actually, so it's not to do all the answering today. I know Emily Robson is on the call, and I know she has, it's part of your corporate strategic agenda that she leads an arts and culture plan. So maybe I'll defer to Ms. Robson for this one.
Ms. Robson?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Bravanovic, thanks for the question, and I'm glad you brought it up, Councillor March. So as Corey mentioned, a new culture plan is on the corporate business plan to be delivered in 2021. We've started with some planning right now, and I'm really excited to say that we're coordinating with our colleagues at the City of Waterloo, the region of Waterloo, and in Cambridge to figure out what a coordinated approach might look like, with plans developed for each of the municipalities, but really looking at the needs of the sector across the region, because we know that folks in this sector work across all of those jurisdictions. So we're expecting to bring something to council in line with the timeline from the corporate business plan, and getting kind of underway in a more outward facing way into the new year.
Okay, that's really great. And so for the $5 million, I don't know if this is for you, Ms. Robson, or you, Mr. Bloom, regarding the $5 million that we're looking towards pandemic recovery, will some of that be accessible by arts and culture groups and individuals as well?
I can take it, Corey, if you like. You've said a lot already, so I'll give you a moment of relief. So yes, through the chair, the recovery planning that's articulated in the Make It Kitchener strategy, as Corey mentioned earlier, is kind of using broad language to encapsulate or try to represent the breadth of the work that goes on in this community, and that includes the arts and culture sector and the creative industries. And so we've included, for example, folks in that sector in some of the early work that we did with the Small Business Recovery Program. So we did interviews with folks in film, music, interactive media, and creative industries. So we're still considering their needs kind of in this recovery approach as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that appears to be all of the questions. Corey, I too would like to thank you and the team publicly for the incredible amount of work that went into this. It was started, as you noted, 17 months ago, pre-pandemic, and we were all hopeful that we would have seen it completed and approved earlier this spring, but then the pandemic hit and everything got delayed, and wisely so, because it's given us an opportunity to reflect on how we can use this as a tool to be part of our pandemic response as well. And I think your team has pivoted incredibly well in terms of all of this. And so on behalf of council, I do want to publicly acknowledge the team for the great work that you've all done in putting this together. Obviously with the input of I think the report references some 900 interactions with 600 people over the course of, I got my stats right, over the course of the report. So that's pretty impressive. Okay, so with that, we'll go into comments. Councillor Ioannidis, you indicated you wanted to move the motion. Now, originally, I think it was contemplated that we would do a motion that we would actually vote on it next Monday on the 26th, but I'm in council's hands on that. We could vote on it today if people prefer. We can leave it till the 26th, or we can approve it in principle today and do a final vote on Monday the 26th. So as you're making your comments, perhaps, well, actually, I'll come to you first, Councillor Ioannidis, and then we can take it from there.
Thanks, Mayor Urbanovic. So do you want me to just make my comments, or do you want me to?
Well, I guess, do you have a preference or a suggestion in terms of how we might proceed in that regard? Like, what's council's wish? Like,
For myself, I can go tonight, or I can go Monday. It doesn't matter to me. It's just a matter of what everyone else agrees. Like, we're here now. We can finish it.
Okay, I'm seeing some nodding heads. So I'll proceed with that assumption, unless I'm hearing some real concerns as we go along with people's comments. So with that, Councillor Ioannidis, you're first up with your comments.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor Urbanovic. Kitchener has made great strides over the past 15 years from an economic development point of view. The decisions made by successive councils, first with Edith and more recently with the original Make It Kitchener strategy, helped make Kitchener one of the most successful economies in the country. However, we always knew we could not rest on our laurels. Like I always say, pedal to the metal, and embarked 15 months ago a new strategy to lead this community for the next 5+ years. Then COVID hit. The COVID pandemic has brought unprecedented economic challenges to our community, resulting in hardships on businesses, employers, and employees. The city is here to support our impacted businesses and ensure the long-term economic success of our community. As we go forward, the path to economic recovery will require significant investments in both immediate measures to support impacted businesses and long-term economic growth. The plan before council tonight is the result of more than a year's worth of work, the input of countless Kitchener residents and business owners, and most importantly, builds on our successes with a new plan that will help continue to move the city and this region forward for another decade and beyond. This is a plan that will not only allow us to respond to COVID-19 and support small businesses and others that are impacted by COVID-19, but it will allow us to invest in 5 key areas: health innovation, the creative industry, a citywide startup network, a vibrant and active city, and very importantly, affordable housing and attainable housing. The best part of this plan is that it's built upon delivering these results with little to no impact on the taxpayer. With the proposed funding model of 10 million from reserves, 20 million from the existing Edith debt room, and 80 million from strategic land sales, it recognizes now is not the time to go to the ratepayer for dollars to support or invest the economy. Now is the time to look to see how we can use existing resources to make the necessary investments that will support this community and future generations in our collective future. Council, the time for us to do this is now. A new economic development strategy was a council priority for us when we started this term and started this work. this term. It's even bigger priority now. We collectively work hard with other partners to ensure we continue to make Kitchener one of the best communities to live, work, play in Canada.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey, you're up next.
That's great, thank you. Just for the record too, I'm certainly comfortable dealing with this tonight, especially since we have all the economic development staff here to answer questions. And I don't think I'm not even close to being on the fence on this. Yeah, I'll be brief. The most, I don't know, ridiculously awesome part about this strategy in my mind was how a significant part of it was formed before we even knew COVID was a thing that was going to affect us all so significantly. And when we're talking about, how we can move forward on a strategy, the fact of the matter that we can't go back to the taxpayers, especially at this time, to fund this strategy was built into the plan before we knew COVID was going to affect it to that degree. The fact that we wanted to focus on health innovation, and this is not my focus, but the input of again, several members of the community that wanted to point us in a direction, that wanted to focus on health innovation again before COVID struck. So as we're going through this, the COVID nightmare that we still find ourselves in, it's amazing to me that the strategy dovetailed so well in to what we're facing today and how we can address it. And I really do see it as being a model for other municipalities across the country as how they can help prop up their economy and get us back on our feet without having to put additional financial burden on the businesses or residents that we have. So great work, Corey and your team. And I can't wait to see where this goes over the years.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Next up, I have Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first just want to thank staff for all their hard work and energy that they've put in, passion that they've put into this project. I know that there's a lot of time and energy that's gone into this, so I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. It's been said that this doesn't cost the taxpayers money. It does cost the taxpayers. It costs them by losing assets. And if you don't have the asset, then you can't use it for other potential purposes. I am not against this strategy. I just want to make the point that these assets have value to the taxpayer, and that I'm happy that there's limits being put around what assets we are looking at within this strategy. The debt room could be used for other purposes or could be given back to the taxpayers. So I just want to make that point. At the end of the day, I don't know if I agree with the plan of $110 million, but I'm comforted with the fact that the strategy comes back to council throughout the course of the plan. And I agree, having said that, I agree with the vision of Make It Kitchener 2.0, and I agree with being bold, and I agree with the principles of the plan. And therefore I will support it, but I will be looking at it throughout the course of the plan to make the decisions independently when they do come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. I'm also very impressed with the fact that this strategy was primarily built pre-COVID, and it aligns so well with some of it has been built in since COVID struck, for sure. But back at the Ideas of the Brave discussions, it was no surprise it was going to be a priority, but it was a big surprise, I think, to many of us, that it was the top priority by far. And so I'm really pleased to see the response in the strategy to that priority that was so clearly identified by a really broad range of members of our community and business community. Round of discussions about the strategy, we'll be seeing that detailed action plan in January. And so I really look forward to seeing that and seeing how we can get to the business of supporting those most hurt by COVID-19 right now, and doing our best to be creative and collaborative with our other partners, other levels of government, to really build back a stronger, healthier Kitchener. And Mr. Mayor, I'm fine with voting on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also would be very comfortable in being able to vote on it tonight. And I think the strategy is a reflection point. Previously, this was definitely a bold decision that resulted in tremendous returns. Without saying, 1.8 billion investment in our downtown core and over $8 billion in development across the city. After the shift in manufacturing, we didn't become a city that had seen its prime. Instead, we chose to invest in ourselves to create more opportunity and prosperity. I'm thankful for a previous council who showed leadership and forethought. Future generations will definitely say the same about us if we choose to not lift our foot off the accelerator of the Kitchener economic engine. We're fortunate to have tried and tested path forward. This is not something new. Investing on catalytic growth opportunities worked. Just to name a few: partnership with the University of Waterloo for the School of Medicine and the Pharmacy, partnership with the University of Laurier, partnership with Communitech, investing from EDIF to leverage on available funding from Fed and the province to create solar roof that generates 500 kilowatt of power and continues to generate between 350,000 to 450,000 a year since 2011. And that's based on our past strategy. Committed to collaboration and partnership. EDIF 2.0, I'm sure, will continue to do the same. And further, it will be an economic development strategy that's socially and culturally focused, using the riches of our community to enhance our arts and culture, stimulate the growth of affordable and attainable housing. We're supporting a strategy that relies on existing assets and the ability to borrow within existing tax base. I'm not saying it's not costing the taxpayers, but it's important to reflect that no new cost to the taxpayer base on their, on what they pay on their property taxes. The city is investing over $110 million without having to raise taxes, and that's an important point to focus on. EDIF 2.0 is being respectful to Kitchener taxpayers and the pressures that they are facing during this pandemic. The EDIF 2.0, once on my final note, will be the beacon showcasing all that Kitchener has to offer and unleashing the incredible potential of our community. And I'm enthused to support it. And Mr. Mayor, I would love to be able to second it once the time comes.
I will, since Councillor Ioannidis moved it, I'll take yours as a seconding.
No, I meant to say second. So I in special counsel. So
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Bravanovic. I've just got to say, with tonight and last night, what a great time to be a councillor and represent the citizens of our great city with our equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism last night, and where I feel things are going with Make It Kitchener 2.0. I was really pleased to hear Corey, say what really made an impact on him personally when the engagement was done, and the underlying feeling that we want everyone in this city to be included. Everyone wants to support each other. We want things affordable. We want this a city that's awesome for everyone, where it's affordable to live, where it's great to live, where we have a great economy, where we have a vibrant city, where we're innovating, we're creating, we're making. This is what we're good at. And I love the foundation of Make It Kitchener 2.0. I really want to thank Corey and the team for all the work they put into this, but I also want to thank everyone who took the time to engage, who came out and wrote something on a Post-it note and was on one of our advisory committees that ran through this, and how everything kind of formed together for this awesome document and this awesome plan. As my fellow councilors have pointed out too, this began being created pre-pandemic, and it's wonderful to see how much more it makes sense now during the pandemic, and it will make more sense post-pandemic. So I'm really looking forward to supporting this. I am in favor of looking after this tonight, and also just want to say thank you to fellow councilors for the great work that we've all done collectively on this, great talks that we've had. We've all been out at the engagement meetings, and it's really been exciting to be a part of it. So proud to be serving with all of you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. And I have to start by saying that when this plan was first presented to us, I was so excited to see it, and I was so inspired by what is in here and by the thoughts from the community about how they wanted it to be inclusive and include everyone. They didn't want anyone left behind with this plan. As we've heard from other economic groups tonight, that this really is a great direction to be heading in. And so it's got the support of the business community. It has the support of leaders in this community, which came through loud and clear at such events as Ideas of the Brave. And it truly is an inspiring document. And to piggyback on some comments that Councillor Schneider just said too, what an exciting time to be here in the city of Kitchener. We are doing groundbreaking things here. We are making decisions that will be changing our community for years to come in a very positive way. And it's incredible. And I'm thrilled to be supporting this, and I think we can deal with it tonight as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to Corey and team for all of your work on this, and thank you to the other councillors as well.
Great, thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to congratulate Corey and the team on such a fantastic document that we can go forward on. I'm born and raised in Kitchener. My father was in the manufacturing industry, worked at Uniroyal. I remember going downtown when, you know, downtown was in the old streets, all the cars were parked on the streets, the stores were bustling. Gone through all these transitions, and now I'm on council. And I go around the city and I see how much this city has grown. And sometimes it makes my stomach kind of get uneasy because it's growing so fast. But when I see a document like this and I look back to the first EDIF or the last EDIF that we did and see how far we've come, it gives me great pride to be part of this council and to be part of this whole process. And I'm really super excited going forward for our city. I'll support this, and I'm happy to support this tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Michaud. Any other comments before I make mine? No other comments? Okay, so I will just say, Council, that myself and Mr. Chapman have received some emails from Councillor Gazzola, who's indicated that his audio is not working, his phone is dying. This should come back to council on the 26th, and subsequently said his landline has died and his cell is intermittent. So in light of that, I will make my comments now, and my suggestion would be, in light of everyone's comments, that we deal with this as Councillor Ioannidis, with a vote in principle. And that we have our final vote on Monday, next Monday, so that all members of council have an opportunity to participate in light of their technical difficulties where everything seems to have died. So if there aren't any other comments, I will make mine. First of all, I just again want to reiterate my thanks not only to Mr. Bloom and the staff team, but also to all those members in the community that have been part of this process. And as the report indicates, there were over 650 community members that have engaged over 950 touch points with respect to this strategy. And when we embarked on this strategy 17 months ago, it was, as Councillor Ioannidis pointed out, a priority of this council. It worked its way into our 4-year strategic plan and was an important item for all of us. When we started it, nobody knew what COVID-19 was. And obviously, by the time we hit February, March rather, we very much knew what it was in our community. And as has been pointed out, that has resulted in unprecedented economic challenges that we have collectively had to deal with, and forced us to pause on the development of the report to really look to see how we can not only provide immediate supports to the business community, but also continue to look at this from a long-term perspective. As Corey indicated, and I had an opportunity to sit through many of the strategic sessions with members of the community, it was the fact that every single group touched on affordability as a priority that for me was incredibly compelling. That and the desire to make sure that we ensure that we bring everyone along. And I think it is in the report thus that, you know, many of those the comments that we heard in those sessions are reflected in these 5 that are reflected in the report. It's not just about doing more, it's about doing better. We need to solve major societal changes such as affordable housing, environmental sustainability, and the elimination of systemic barriers. We need to aspire to have our own distinct vibrancy and vibe. We need to focus on growing employment sectors such as health innovation, creative industries, and social innovation. Kitchener can and should be a leader in building a better world. And the one on the very colorful page in the report is let's stand up and be the city that does the most good in the world. And for me, that really also aligns so much with a concept that's come from Communitech and our local tech community that many of them have been working on, which is this whole notion of tech for good. And how do we use technology to build a better community, a more just community, a better world for everyone. And this strategy, which is built on the impact economy, that considers things like the Sustainable Development Goals, things like this new concept of donut economics, is one that is really designed to ensure that we truly build a community and a country where nobody is left behind. And it's working to ensure that we as a city do our part, but also ensure that others are part of that story going forward. And that includes the provincial and federal governments, our local partners where there's opportunities to partner with the other municipalities in the region, as well as the private sector, academia, and the not-for-profit sector. They all need to be part of the solution. I've already had very preliminary conversations around what we're doing here with both Minister Phillips and Minister Freeland, in the sense that this is the kind of thing that I also think the federal government should be looking at as they contemplate how the federal government can be and the provincial government can partner with cities around economic recovery going forward. And I think it's a good foundation for them to look at. So as we move forward together, I believe this strategy touches on many of the key areas that really provide the best chance for us to focus our energies. Most immediately, though, we're going to need to ensure we come out better, that we build back better as a community coming out of the pandemic. There's no doubt that there are going to be challenges in the months ahead, And this will be part of our toolbox to address those challenges. So I too want to say how proud I am of our community and of this council and the issues that we dealt with last night and now the one that we're dealing with tonight. And this is a fantastic strategy that will guide this community for many years to come. So with that, you still have a phone call? Yeah, sure. You want to see if that's Councillor? I think that may be Mr. McLean's phone.
Ah, it's disappeared on me now. I apologize.
Yeah, I think it was Mr. McLean's phone from before. Okay, so Councillor Ioannidis, then, so your motion we're dealing with in principle, and we'll bring it back to council for final ratification on Monday. Anyone asking for a recorded vote or no? Councillor Johnson, okay. So recorded vote's been called. We'll start with, we'll start at the back end because I always get accused of always starting at the front. Councillor Marsh.
The back end.
Or 10.
We're at the core. We're at the center of the city.
That's true.
In favor.
Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
Councillor Ioannidis. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Johnson. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm in favor. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Singh.
In principle, strong support.
Councillor Galloway Seelock.
In favor.
Councillor Michaud.
In favor.
Councillor Gazzola is absent. Councillor Schneider.
In favor.
And Councillor Davey.
110% in favor.
And the mayor is 110% in favor as well. So that does carry you unanimously, but we'll have the final vote next Monday. So with that, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of the week.